So I have the honor of introducing our guest speaker today. She is Reverend Amanda Ganley, who is an independent, thank you, Jeannie, an independent New Thought minister and licensed spiritual practitioner with Centers for Spiritual Living. Reverend Amanda is passionate about creating safe space for others to authentically express who they are. As a spiritual counselor, life coach, and teacher, she celebrates diversity within community, relationship styles, family models, and the gifts of all individuals. She has an open and non-judgmental approach to supporting others as they work to make positive changes in their own lives and in the world. And there is, if you didn't happen to notice it, in the last month's Science of Mind magazine, there's a wonderful article about her. It is called The Power of Being Ourselves. I highly recommend it, so catch that also. But you get to see her in person, so that's a good thing too. She has over 3 years of experience speaking from the pulpit, and her ability to nurture and guide others into a wholehearted realization of their own gifts is some of her greatest work. So please join with me in giving just a rousing, enthusiastic Riverside welcome to Reverend Amanda.
Good morning. Thank you, everyone, for that very warm welcome. I appreciate it. And thank you to Jeannie and Allison for helping me move furniture. So just so you know, whenever I visit anyone, the first thing I do is I will move your furniture around. So thank you guys for helping me move the furniture. We're good. Yeah, thank you so much. Family, you gotta love them. So thank you for being my family this morning. Beautiful. Let me just take a minute to take you all in. So I'm going to invite you to take a deep breath with me. Beautiful. So I'm going to start this morning with a story that I heard many years ago. It was actually a YouTube video from this production called Highly Evolved Human. And this was a young man who was diagnosed with cancer. He was in his 20s. And, he had gone off as we do in life and started his own life. But when he was diagnosed with cancer, he had to move back home. He moved back in with his parents. He moved back to his hometown, which I believe was Denver, and was going through the treatments for cancer at the time. And he found himself on public transportation one afternoon, riding the bus without any hair, looking as we do when we're undergoing chemotherapy and radiation. And, probably very exhausted at that point and just sort of wanting to chill out on the bus. And finds himself across from someone who really wanted to engage with him. And he's going, oh, no. And this man was there with his friend and he's like, hey. And he's trying to ignore him. And he finally can't. And he's like, hey, did you lose a bet or something? What's with the hair? Right? And so many of us, as we do, he was kind of like, oh. And he's like, no, actually I have cancer. And I'm going through chemotherapy. He was just really calm and just was with him in that. And, and the guy's friend is going, oh, I can't believe how embarrassing my friend is right now. And he's sort of covering his face. And the guy's just like embarrassed himself. He's like, oh. Then he takes a minute and he's like, well, I'm addicted to porn. And this guy, he's an alcoholic. And then they're all just sort of like do the fist pump thing. And then he's just like, oh. And then the guy's like, well, do you want to go out for a drink? He's like, no, but we can go for coffee, right? Because my friend, he's an alcoholic. And so then they all just go out to coffee together. They're willing to connect with one another all over this horribly embarrassing moment that they have now shared on the bus, where this guy is undergoing chemotherapy and doesn't look his healthiest, where this guy who is addicted to porn decided he needed to now share this with this whole bus full of people. And he's also outed his friend, like just for the heck of it, right? Like, oh, yep, that my friend, he's got a drinking problem. So how often in the world do we get to have these opportunities where we're willing to connect with all of life around us, right? when we're just willing to be called into our vulnerability in this way, to be present with one another's humanity. And I love that story because for me, I was invited to talk about compassion today. And I think that that is one of the most beautiful examples that I've ever heard of compassion, right? So I decided to take a couple steps back after I thought of this story and look up what the definition of compassion is. Has anyone ever looked up compassion in the dictionary? Yeah, I didn't really like it. It was really a definition that says, what did it say? Pity was in the definition. So it really was that we are willing to pity those around us for not being where we are in the world. And I was like, no, not so much, not really where I would want my definition of compassion to be. So Thomas Merton, if I can find it in my notes, had a really great definition. Pardon me. Thomas Merton, who is an American Catholic writer and mystic, he says that compassion is the keen awareness of the interdependence of all things. A keen awareness of the interdependence of all things. This understanding that we are all connected. How beautifully science of mind, right? This understanding that you and I are one. And that not only are you and I are one, that we are connected to all of life around us. And that we are dependent on one another. So my grace, my peace, is dependent on your grace and your peace. Your experience of love is also dependent on my experience of love. My willingness to open my heart and be present with all of life, all of the time, makes me more available to be present to your experience of the divine. And not only to be present to it, but to support it. And the more that we're willing to step into that truth for ourselves, the more that we're willing to be this presence of love, we create this love in the world for other people to experience it as well. I visited this community for Reverend Jeff's installation, and I know that you all get this. Right? I know that you get that the love that is this community, the beacon that is in this room, is creating a space for this love to show up in the rest of the world, which is really how Ernest defines compassion, right? And Ernest defines love in this way. Love is self-givingness through creation, the impartation of the divine through the human. Love is an essence, an atmosphere which defies analysis, as does life itself. It is that which is and cannot be explained. It is common to all people, to all animal life, and evident in the response of plants to those who love them, because love reigns supreme over all. Let's just think about love reigns supreme over all, which really brings me to my favorite thought, that compassion is love in action. Compassion is not only that place where we recognize that we are all connected and dependent on one another, but it is our willingness to act out of our love for all of those things that is true compassion. Any place where we are willing to be moved by our hearts and to be willing to be moved by this love, we are being compassion. We are being love in action. We are taking it out into the world. And I know that sometimes it doesn't strike us that way, right? When we read the dictionary definition of compassion and it says that it's pity, when we are moved by something in the world and we want to be spurred to action, we don't always feel like we're moving from love. So has anyone ever had this experience where they have felt really uncomfortable and they really wanted to do something about it? We see something on the news, we see something happening across the room, and it's like, this is not okay, right? And we feel that part of ourselves just sort of tense up and say, I should do something. And sometimes it's not just I should do something, but I am really frustrated, I am really angry, I am really being called to action. And that doesn't necessarily feel in all of our bones like this is love in action. But that frustration, that anger, that hurt, that thing that is spurring us to move, that is it. That is our love. We wouldn't be angry, we wouldn't be frustrated, we wouldn't be hurting if we weren't feeling this huge amount of love and we wanted to act out of it. So when we see these things in the world that we want to change, we want life to be different, on any level, whether it's personal, whether it's for our loved ones, whether it's out in the world, we are actually being called by love into action. And that is compassion. That is it. This is the stuff. We say that we want to soften our hearts. We say that we want to be more present to the world around us. And then we just get really irritated, right? Does anybody else have that experience? I would love to be open. I want to be the power and the presence of love in any room that I walk into. I want to sit and be in peace so that other people around me know that peace is possible. But sometimes I just get pissed. Right? Sometimes we just see things on the news that are not pleasant, that make us hurt or sad or angry inside, and that hurt and that anger and that sadness is still my willingness to love the world so much that I am upset when it is not the beauty that I know that it is, and I want to make it that way for everyone. When I recognize that the love and the peace and the joy that is running through every molecule that I am is a gift that everyone in the world is entitled to experience, and I want to create a space for other people to do exactly that, to have exactly the same experience, where love and peace and joy and kindness, we're taking a deep breath and being able to breathe in the songs of the birds outside of this building this morning is a joy that everyone gets to experience. And when I love the world and I am compelled into action, when I am compelled to do something about it, that is compassion. So what I love to do when I stand up in rooms like this is people say, that's all beautiful, and then how do I do that? So I'm trying to show up with some practical advice, right? So has anyone ever done a compassionate heart meditation before? No? Okay. So a compassionate heart meditation usually starts close in, and then it builds out. And if you're really lucky, you can start close in with yourself. But usually we pick something that's really close to us. So a furry friend, the person whose face that we enjoy looking at the most in the world, our grandbabies, our babies, whoever that is. And it's really clear that we can soften our hearts, right? To be present with the love that is in that connection. And then we feel that softening, that open heart grow to people who are also in our periphery, to the people who are in this room, who we love to see on Sunday mornings, to the people who we are most closely connected to at work or in our family or in the world around us. And then as we soften our hearts to encompass all of this, then we start to soften our hearts to encompass all of Riverside, all of California, all of the United States, all around the world. And then we allow that love to echo back in to us. And that's where I want to start with this conversation today, because compassion, this desire to love the world, to be gentle with it, gets to start with us first. Because what happens most often is that we have this dialogue in our brain where, I really love you, self, but you got to get your stuff together. And then you got to get your stuff together turns into some really tough language that if our friends and family heard anyone else use on us, would be very upset, right? They would not want us talking to ourselves that way. So when we have this voice inside our brain being much tougher than saying you got to get your stuff together, and we walk around the world using this really not so nice voice with ourselves, then guess what? The world knows it. The world knows that our compassionate heart, our desire to open up to love and to peace and to make the world a better place for everyone is landing in a place where we are not making it better first for ourselves. And it just doesn't work that way, y'all. It works the way, ouch. Yeah, it just doesn't work that way. When we are not a soft landing space first for ourselves, we will not be a soft landing space for anyone or anything else. So this compassion, this desire to love the world, this desire to be love in action gets to start right here with the person that I hope you love the most And if you don't, there is an invitation in the room now to just recognize that you get to be the person that you love the most. So our friend Pema Chodron, who is a Buddhist nun, actually talks about this and talks about myatri, I'm saying that wrong, this need to love ourselves, and says that this is actually not as selfish as it sounds, right? For exactly the reasons that I'm explaining to you. This ability to connect with ourselves and to be soft and to be a gentle place to land for the rest of the world is us being of service. Because we have to be willing to be this soft place first for us. So to be willing to connect with that. So what do I have from Pema? She says, having compassion starts and ends with having compassion for all of those unwanted parts of ourselves, all those imperfections that we don't even want to look at. Because what a beautiful practice it is in compassion to look at ourselves in the mirror, or to have an honest conversation with our behavior, or to have an honest conversation with the way that our life is showing up for us and say, you know what? Maybe not so great. Maybe not where I want to be. Maybe my hair is not the right shade of blue today, but I love myself anyway. I like myself. Not just I love, right? It's kind of easy to love something and sort of pretend like those imperfections don't exist. But when we're willing to like ourselves, when we're willing to say, my behavior yesterday, not so cute, not so pretty, but I still like myself today enough to love myself and be gentle. Then I can move out into the world and start to bring that compassion next to the people who are closest to me. So did anyone else have parents who were just like convinced that you could talk to them about anything, and as a kid you were going, not so much. Like, nah, I'm probably not going to go to that parent about that thing. And it wasn't ever because those parents weren't compassionate with us, but because they weren't compassionate with themselves. So they weren't able to create that space. And what we want to do when we want to love those people closest to us, when we want to be love in action, when we want to be that safe place for them, we are then opening our hearts and our minds to being love in action and being their safe place. So how do we do that? Brene Brown says this. She says, what if we were willing to acknowledge our own hurt and pain, and in doing so, make sure not to diminish the hurt and pain of others? We could change the world. What if we were able to acknowledge our own hurt and pain and not diminish anyone else's? Does anyone else have that experience where they just get so caught up in their own story and their own narrative about what's going on, maybe even so caught up in their own hurt, that we can't bother to see what's around us? I'll be honest, when I was preparing for this talk, I had to take a step back and I was like, oh, I need this moment to remember that if I want to be the soft place for someone else, first I got to do it for me, and then I got to remember to be soft. To remember that my hurt and my pain is not the only thing worth engaging in. That my joy and my excitement is also not the only thing worth engaging in. Because we want to facilitate those things for life and the world around us. And that means we get to open up our hearts and our minds to acknowledging the person's experience who is across the table from us, across the room, in all of life as it surrounds us. Because on days when I am having a great day, maybe the people around me might not be having such a great day. And you know what? There's room for all of those things to happen in this thing called life. There is enough space in us as individuals and as human beings to open our hearts and hold the days where my grief gets to be right along someone else's celebration, and there is enough room and beauty in me to do that. And how lucky and how blessed are we to love life in this way where we can be on the roller coaster ride with it, right? I love the roller coaster ride metaphor because we are doing that, and the person next to us or on the car 3 cars behind us is having a completely different experience, but there is enough room for all of those things to be happening at one time. And how beautiful. So then we get to move into compassion for the world, right? We get to understand that this world that we want to leave for our children, this world and this space that we want to create for the people who are closest to us, is also a world that we are wanting to create for the world around us, right? For the larger community as a whole, for the world, for Riverside, for California, for those things that we see on the news, and we want to do something, anything. We want to do something because we love this world and this life so much that we are feeling called to move. We are feeling called to move by our love, which sometimes looks like our frustration, which sometimes looks like our tears, which oftentimes makes us want to just shut down instead of move. Does anybody else have that experience? I just have to turn off the news. I have to walk away from this thing because I want to fix all the things. Right now, I want to fix all the things because I love this world so much and I want people to have a beautiful life. And now I am so overwhelmed that I don't know what to do next, but I have to do something. And that is your love in action. That is your willingness to be present with the divine in every single person, in every single thing. And then there is a willingness to be called to do what is ours. So author Kent Nurbum says this. He says, the world we shape is the world we touch, with our words, our actions, our dreams. If we should be so lucky as to touch the lives of many, so be it. But if our lot is no more than the setting of a table, or the tending of a garden, or showing a child a path in the wood, our lives are no less worthy. Our lives are no less worthy. So many of us see these things, and we feel like we are called to action all of the time, that we don't take the step back to do what is ours. And to recognize the ways that we are already showing up in the world as this gift of love in action, as these compassionate and loving hearts. My husband used to have a pet tarantula. And he was super sweet. He was lost in the desert in New Mexico. We're from New Mexico. And it just got too cold. And so he found John and he was like, please give me a home. And so what I loved about him was there was that moment of picking him up where it was like, I'm holding a spider. I'm holding a spider. And then, and you just sort of have this moment where you understand that this is a living creature that is in your hand that you get to be really gentle with, right? And you sort of are watching this gentle creature do its thing, crawling up your arm, having its own existence. And this moment where I am called to be really gentle. To be gentle along with it. To let this spider have its existence, have its own being, to be safe in the world. And I can't think of a better way to love the world than this willingness to hold out our hand and to let it be what it needs to be, and to love it so much that I am being willing to be called to do what is mine to serve it, even if it is this simple act of just holding my hand open. And every single one of us has the ability to hold the world gently and to know that we are being called to hold it and love it and be of service to it in a way that only we can. Only each one of us has the one way that we are capable of to love this world gently and to make it a better place for everyone and everything around us. And for some of us, it is holding the spider in our hands. For many of us, it's walking the dogs at the shelter. There are many people in this room who were talking about walking dogs and serving the shelter animals this morning, which is something that I love to do. When I first came to a Center for Spiritual Living, it was singing in the choir, right? That felt like the safe place for me to check in and to be a part of the community and to love it in a way that I knew how and felt comfortable. Yes, sir. I know you got me. Because we've all got those ways that we love the world in the way that only each one of us can. And that is what we have been called here to do. This love that we put into action is our compassionate hearts. It is the way that we love life and give the gift of it to everyone and everything around us. And how blessed are we to have the opportunity and the awareness to do that. To be willing to sit in meditation, to be willing to sit in prayer, to be willing to come to community like this one and know that we are supported in this idea that we love the world in only the way that each one of us can, and the world supports us as doing that, and we make a difference. And we make a difference when we are willing to connect to one another's humanity in this way. Because that's what we're doing when we come into rooms like this. When we hold out our hands for one another, we are recognizing that humanity that Thomas Merton was talking about and connecting with that truth. That truth that each one of us is divine and whole and perfect and complete. And loving one another in that way is compassion. It's love in action. So the reading from Ernest Holmes today is called Compassion is Love Indeed. And he says, humanity and divinity will be identical when we recognize divinity in humanity. We must learn to see through the apparent, to judge not according to appearances, to realize that at the center of every person's soul, God is enthroned. Compassion and caring are the ties that bind us together in mutual understanding and in the unified attempt to uncover the divinity in each other. Compassion is the most gentle of all human virtues, for it is the outpouring of the divine givingness through all. And this is his invitation. Suppose we make a daily habit of feeling that we like people and they like us. We belong to them and they belong to us. In a very real sense, everyone we meet is part of our own family, to love and to enjoy. Let's then meditate daily on this thought. My desire is that everyone I meet will feel the warmth and color of my affection. My purpose is that a feeling of goodwill shall pass from me to others. Today I embrace the world in this affection and desire so that good shall come to everyone. So that good shall come to everyone. And it starts first within. That good first belongs to me. I know that it exists in this moment, and I am willing to hold the space within myself where this good is available to me right here, right now, and all the time. And as soon as I know that for me, then I know that for the beautiful human who is sitting next to me. Maybe I'm holding their hand. Maybe we've never met before, but I am willing to know that that good is available for you next to me, for every single one of us in this room, right here and right now. And as I know that that good is available for me, I know that that good is available for every bit of life outside of these four walls. The leaves in the trees, the clouds in the sky, the birds singing, that love is present. And it's moving. It is living life down in that park right now. I can guarantee it. That love is acting all the time. And the more that I soften my heart to this, that I am willing to become this experience of compassion, the more that I will see it all around me. And as I do that, I will watch it grow by leaps and bounds. So that the next time I see something on the news that frustrates me, I will remind myself that this is my love in action. This is my heart loving the world. And if it's mine to do, to fix something or to go and get off my butt and move, then I will do that. And if it's mine to sit here and be in prayer and be mindful around whatever the circumstance is, then that is mine to do as well. Because it doesn't have to be huge, no matter how large or how small. When we are making that difference, when we are willing to do that, we are changing the world. So remember that as you go bid on those baskets this afternoon, right? No bid is too big, and no act is too small. That every place where we are willing to be our love in action, we are changing the world. And that is one thing we can all definitely feel good about ourselves within, right? Okay. So I brought a Hafiz poem which echoed Ernest, so I wanted to share it with you. It's called With That Moon Language. Admit something. Everyone you see, you say to them, "Love me." Of course you do not do this out loud, otherwise someone would call the cops. Still though, think about this. This great pull in us to connect, why not become the one who lives with a full moon in each eye that is always saying, with that sweet moon language, what every other one of us is thinking? Love me, and I will love you in return. And that is available to us all the time. Thank you so much for having me here today, this morning. Your community has been so welcoming and beautiful. Thank you, Jeannie, for showing me around, and Allison for the beautiful introduction, and Reverend Jeffrey, thank you so much for inviting me while you get to be off in France eating decadent meals. I appreciate that to no end. And it's been a great pleasure being here this morning, so thank you all for having me.